Have you ever done a favor for someone only to realize that what the person really needed was to either improve their skill set or increase their capacity? And maybe you've asked for a favor for someone, and then really in retrospect, you actually acknowledge that what you really needed to do was either improve your skill set or increase your capacity to do the very thing that you've requested. Well, in this episode, I want us to look at two different types of people. The type of people that completely give into a disability or a lack of skill, a skill set, or the people that really motivate themselves to increase their capacity to just be able to perform or do different things. And so, without further ado, dear ProFAITHsional, this is a podcast to share God's favor over your work life and ministry while I offer you a professional favor. Although faith without works is dead, sometimes we do our job and our work without faith. So my wish is to inspire, motivate, and encourage us to grow our faith in the midst of our job and work environment. So thanks for listening. All right, so the motivation for this episode is the following story. Some time ago, my mom and I offered to drive someone from Cincinnati to Columbus. That's about 110 miles drive each way. Now, the reason or the purpose for the drive or for the trip was that a friend of my mom's, she needed to be tested in order for her to get her cosmetology license within the state of Ohio. The person had graduated, they had done all their studies, they had done all their practical hours, and so now this was the time for her to just get tested and get the official documentation that she can be licensed to practice. And so the interesting thing happened that about halfway through on the way there, and I believe this could have been her nerves or her anxiety kicking in, but the person said, I wish they would just move the state office and then maybe establish one in every city. And so when she says this, I'm like, what do you mean? And she said, well, there should actually be a licensing office in every city or in every county or whatever, just somewhere closer to us, to people. And I said, interesting. Now, mind you, the reason we are driving her, as in my mom and I, and I was behind the wheel. Number one, I'm going because the person requested my mom if she could do her the favor. But because in our family, I'm the designated driver or the one that likes to drive, although I can do without it. I said, now I volunteered as tribute. And I said, surely enough, I will go with you, Mom. I'll do this for you and I'll drive the two of you. So the reason though we embarked on this journey, three of us, is because the person has an actual driver's license, but they refuse to drive on the highway either because they're super anxious, they're getting nervous, they're just afraid. I guess they have a phobia of driving on the highway. And so for that reason, the person really does not drive any long distances, or at least they only drive places where they can get to on some kind of local road, maybe nowhere that she can go higher than 45 miles an hour. I don't know what her actual limit is. All I know is that she will not drive on the highway. And so here we are driving her to Columbus so that she can get her cosmetology license, which is great. However, when she said that a licensing office should be established in every city, that kind of shocked me, or it shocked me because the question that I threw at her and I asked her, I said, well, why don't you drive to Columbus? As in, why don't you drive yourself to Columbus? And then her response obviously was, well, because it scares me and I don't drive on the highway. And then when she acknowledged that, I said, all right, so just think about this with me, okay? So I say, I'm driving so you can get tested. But in theory, there's nothing stopping you from driving to Columbus. As in, you are capable, air quotes on capable, to drive yourself to Columbus. It's just that you've adopted a limitation and you refuse to do so. All right. So then I said something along the lines of, after kind of that thought, and I wanted that to really sink in on her, that like literally you could do this, like you can do this. Surely you can do this. But then I said something along the lines afterwards, and I said, well, instead of you saying, it's interesting because instead of you saying that you should motivate yourself to be able to drive on the highway, you prefer that the state changes its entire procedure and licensing infrastructure just so that they can make it easier for you. So you want them to do something, as in like move across the state and do all of these different accommodations, just because you yourself won't challenge yourself to increase your capacity to drive on the highway, or to just create a way for you to be able to work through your anxiety or your nerves of driving on the highway. And that really, it stuck with me, because it just made me realize that so many times, so many of us are wanting other people to accommodate the different things that we are unable to do. So we want people to accommodate our inabilities. We want people to accommodate the lack of capacity that we have in order to do something. And so I'm not talking about just like plain old comfort. I'm talking about like accommodation. We have a tendency to want to resort back into our limitations, but it's really sometimes challenging and difficult for us to motivate ourselves to improve our skill set or even increase our capacity to do things. And that is why I want us to really look at two different examples that we find in the Bible and really glean from them a couple of principles, or maybe a couple of things that we can apply to our own lives on the topic of how can we increase our capacity or even improve our skill set to be able to do or perform different things in different areas of our lives. And the two different types of people, I should say, well, a parenthesis, a lot of times people say, well, there are only two types of people, and da 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 da. And a lot of times I just always kind of silently, internally think, well, no, there's more than two different types of people. But really, surely, what I want us to focus on is slicing society into two different categories of people. Now, there are all kinds of variety. We exist in all kinds of varieties. However, I believe that there are two different categories where we can fall into as human beings. We can even be people that give into our disability or inability to do something. Or we could be the type of people that increase our capacity in order to do or perform in any area of our lives. So really, surely, the topic of this episode is how to increase your capacity. So we have to acknowledge, though, that when I talk about capacity and skill set and abilities, we have to just take a pause and acknowledge the definition of a disability. A disability is a real thing, and we see it in life daily, right? We may encounter people, or we may even know people in our own families. Maybe you listening could be the person that has an actual disability. So by all means, I do not want to discount or discredit that. So the definition that I thought was really interesting for us to look at about what is an actual disability comes from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. And in the States, we should all be familiar with the CDC now, post the pandemic era. But anyways, I digress. So the definition that the CDC gives for a disability, it states that a disability is any condition of the body or mind, so body or mind, that makes it more difficult for the person with the condition to do certain activities and interact with the world around them. So a condition, it can involve the body, it can involve the mind, and then it really makes it difficult. It doesn't necessarily have to completely make it impossible for you to do something, but it can just make it difficult for you to do certain activities or maybe even interact with the world around you. That is the definition for disability. And what we know to be true is that there are different types of disabilities. There's disabilities in vision, in movement, in thinking, remembering, learning, communicating, hearing, mental health. People can be disabled in their mental health, or even just in social relationships. People can experience a disability. Now, to drive it a little further, what I thought was really interesting is that the World Health Organization, they really pretty much define disability as in having three different dimensions. There are three dimensions to a disability. Number one is an impairment. And the impairment could be in a person's body structure or function, and I'm quoting here, or mental functioning. So an example of an impairment could be the loss of a limb or the loss of vision or just memory loss. So basically, an impairment within the person's body, structure, or function. So the person is impaired in some way. Now, the second dimension is activity limitation. So a disability makes it so that a person has difficulty in carrying out an activity or doing something. The person can have difficulty, for example, in either seeing, hearing, walking, or even problem solving, right? That's where we start to see some of the mental health disabilities where they can impact that. So we have impairments, we have activity limitation, but then the third dimension is the participation restrictions. And this could really manifest itself in any normal daily activities, such as working, engaging in social and recreational activities. So really the three dimensions we have are an impairment, an activity limitation, and the participation restriction. Now, I have to acknowledge that whenever I've seen a person that truly is disabled in any shape, way, form, or capacity, it's really inspiring and really motivational to witness the way that they can live a fruitful life. It's encouraging to see someone that may be disabled, but they can still live a full life. That is mind-blowing. I mean, it's awestruck. Like it's amazing to see and to witness that. On the flip side, what is not very encouraging is when we see someone that continuously they choose to disable themselves. And you might be like, how can someone disable themselves? Well, hello, our friend that just decides that they just cannot drive themselves on the highway because they're afraid to drive at high speeds. I don't know what does it for this person, whether it's the fast flying cars around them or the trucks, whatever it may be. But what we know to be true is that this person has impaired themselves, as in they will not drive on the highway. And the impairment there could be maybe just in their mind. It could be something that just manifests the way that maybe she gets nervous or anxious. But then the limitation is they just will not go different places. They've limited themselves. And maybe that the restriction might be is that they live a life within a very specific radius from, within the bounds of their home. So a person can truly disable themselves, as odd as that may seem. Now, if you think about it, really in the Bible, what I want us to really look at, the two different types of people are that the first person we're going to see is someone that is completely they've given into their disability. They've completely resigned from just being able to do something. Now, that doesn't mean that maybe internally, deep down inside, very deep, they didn't have the desire. They might have had it, but they've just completely given into their disability. As in, I'm disabled. This is as far as I can go. This is as much as I can do. But then the second person that I want us to look at is the person that was really determined to increase the capacity. And surely, I promise you, we find both of these people in the Bible. The first person, we find their story actually in John 5, verses 1 through 9. And this is the person that has completely given into their disability. Now, it's a somewhat of a familiar story for many, but if you're not familiar with it, allow me to read it for you. So John 5, 1 through 9 says, "Afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. Inside the city near the sheep gate was the pool of Bethesda with 5 covered porches. Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, the disabled, right? They lay on the porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. That's an entire lifetime. When Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, 'Would you like to get well?' Now, his response to me is really, it's mind-blowing, or it's really interesting. A lot of times people preach or focus on this little aspect of it. But his response was, 'I can't, sir.' And then he said, 'For I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets there ahead of me.' So then Jesus told him, 'Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk.' And instantly the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. But this miracle happened on the Sabbath. Okay, so the key things here, there are a couple of things we have to observe. Number one, the man is surrounded by a crowd of disabled people. So not everybody had the same condition. However, what we know is that there were some that were blind, they couldn't see, some that were lame, they just couldn't really move or walk or whatnot, what have you. And then there were people that were paralyzed, that they were just pretty much stuck. And so this is really who the type of people that are surrounding this man. Now, interestingly enough, the pool of Bethesda, it was known that the first one that could arrive at the pool whenever the water starts bubbling, because they believed that it was an angel that would descend and then move the waters. And so because of that supernatural act of an angel, they believed that the first person that could get into the water after that miraculous act, that person would receive their miracle and they would be instantaneously healed. So basically what the man was saying is that I'm here and I'm getting myself into the race, but I can't race to the water. So I'm at the start line maybe, but I cannot get to the finish line because no one will no one will help me to get there. Now, when Jesus encounters him, notice that the question that Jesus asks him is, do you want to be healed? It's interesting because Jesus didn't ask him, why are you here? I mean, we can argue and we can say, well, it was obvious. Like Jesus can maybe see his disability because maybe, he's paralyzed, he's lame, he can't move, he's stuck there. But the question that we should really ponder is, do you want to? I believe that in times we have to apply that to ourselves, that we may be either going through any sort of situation, or maybe we've just gotten to a point in our lives where, we have some sort of impairment. It doesn't necessarily have to be a disability, but maybe we have an inability to do something, as in my friend who will not drive on the highway, right? And then the question that we have to stop and really think for ourselves is, do I want this to change? Do I want this to be different? And chances are we may want it to be different, but then what we have to then reflect and take it one step further is, what are we willing to do in order for things to be different? And I feel like that's where maybe, Jesus finds this man is, okay, you're essentially for 30 years, he's been paralyzed, can't really move. And really this was his last resort, meaning him getting to the sheep gate, to him going through the sheep gate and then just sitting or right by the pool of Bethesda. This was him acknowledging, like, this is it. If it doesn't happen this way, it will not happen any other way. In other words, he was really recognizing that this was the one and only way that he could be healed and that his life could change. What he didn't know is that the person that he would come face to face after 38 years of being paralyzed was the person that was capable, or that had the power, the ability to really just completely change his life and completely enable him and empower him to be able to walk and move. So now, we can kind of look at it in a ways that the way that the man responded, right? He said, no one can take me to the pool. No one can take me to the water. And a lot of times maybe that makes me think that there are many different ways that we can justify our conditions. And a lot of times we can justify our inability to do something, maybe because of something that happened in the past, or maybe just because we're just down on our luck. We've tried so many different things and we can no longer make things work for ourselves. And if that's the case, the thing that you cannot, I believe that if you find yourself in that sort of mindset, in that position, then the thing that you have to continuously go back to is, do you want things to change? Do you want things to change? Because surely that was the question that Jesus asked of the man. He said, do you want? He didn't say, can you, will you? He said, do you want to? And so the first thing that we need to do is we have to just acknowledge what are the things that we may want. Do we want to be healthy? Do we want to be free? Do we want to be whole? Do we want to do something different than what we've been doing in the past? And so the application here that I want us to take is, it could be really simple. that there are people who are completely given into an inability or a disability, right? In my church community, there is a big population, or yeah, I should say that, we're a diverse body, a subset of the body of Christ, because there's people from different parts of the world. Specifically, there's different people from Latin America. And so now I'm Dominican, so from Dominican Republic, but in our church community, in our spiritual community, there's the majority of people are from Guatemala. Now, an interesting fact about people from Guatemala is that they are some of the people that you may recognize them as being very meek, very humble. It's almost like built into their fabric that they're known for being, for having an extreme sense of humility. Now, that humility may manifest itself differently in different places. However, it's just almost like they've almost embodied this idea that they live out of humility. And so, but one particular thing that they're really, 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 really kind of known for, or that they've kind of adopted also as part of their identity, is the notion of being shy. And so they've adopted this shyness almost as part of their cultural identity. Now, the interesting thing to me about being shy is that being shy is not necessarily a condition. Being timid is not a condition. Being shy is something that we can work ourselves out of. And I know that from experience. When I was young, in around first grade or so, we lived in Dominican Republic, and then my mom, she was called into school for a meeting with the teacher, and she goes, "You know what, I'm so sorry, but I don't see your daughter progressing." As in me, I was not making any progress. I wasn't like hitting the benchmarks that I needed to hit. And my mom's like, "What are you talking about? Like, I help her do all her little assignments at home, and she knows everything. She knows every single, like, she knows the colors, the numbers, letters, all those things. She knows them. I know for a fact she knows them." And the teacher goes, "Well, I don't see it. I don't understand. Like, I don't believe it." And then what my mom told her was, "How about you take her into a private room and you quiz her, or you test her and just ask her. And surely she will tell you, she will show you all the things that she knows." And so surely the teacher one day, then shortly thereafter, I go into school and then I'm tested. I don't have a lot of recollection of this. I just know it happened. But when it happens, then the teacher notices that I in fact know that I know the things that I need to know in order for me to move on in that at that level. And so then the teacher then, goes back and talks to my mom and explains like, "Okay, well, yeah, you're right. She knows everything." And then what they realized is that I was shy enough that I didn't want to talk in public. I didn't want to talk in front of the class, or I didn't want to talk aloud. But whenever they took me one-on-one, I was able to pretty much say whatever I was asked. And so at that moment, what that did, number one, it confirmed for the teacher, obviously, that I was good, that I was learning. But number two, it really did something to my mom. And then it really set her on this notion that she needed to work that shyness out of me. And literally, that's exactly what she did. So for the early part of my life, she would not allow me to not talk to people. Like literally, ever since I was like really, really little, I would only pretty much interact with our family, and anybody outside of our family, I would almost like kind of like run away from, like stranger danger, like an extreme sense of danger, stranger danger. But whenever that happened, my mom, she took it upon herself when she realized that like that was starting to affect me in school, and she started to work that out of me. So whatever opportunity she saw where I could actually interact, talk, and really just come out of my shell, she will push me to do so. Now, that sounds kind of like involuntary, and it was, but I'm so thankful because I can now, if I look, and if I reflect on all the different opportunities I've had throughout my life, the different doors that I've walked through, surely I can assure you that it's because I was known for not being shy. Like boldness was worked into the fabric of my personality. it was not my natural state of being, but it was something that I was developed into. So anywhere that I go, I'm always known to be extroverted. I'm always known to be just bold, to be able to carry on a conversation. But I did not start out that way. And that just really makes me think about how there are different things in life that maybe you may have grown up because it wasn't necessarily worked out of you, it wasn't necessarily developed out of you, or not, or it wasn't developed into you. But I can assure you that all of us have the capacity in order for us to work into different skill sets or even increase our capacity. The thing is that we cannot give ourselves into our inabilities or give ourselves into a disability of some sort. We have to find the different ways where we can pretty much act or work within the bounds maybe of the ways that we may be impaired. But if it's an impossibility, then we owe it to ourselves to seek out the different ways for us to be able to grow ourselves out of our inabilities. So going back to people from Guatemala, so their shyness and their bashfulness, to me, it baffles me because I've experienced it. I had parents that worked shyness out of me. And so whenever I see parents that are completely enabling their children to not necessarily, speak in public or not speak up, or they just pretty much give them a pass on being shy, then it really is setting them up for limitations just in different things that they maybe are going to be able to do down the line. And so the first type of person is the person that completely resigns into an inability or a disability. So if you're like my friend who refuses to drive on the highway, the question you have to ask yourself is, do you want things to be different? But if you are like maybe, the cultural, in the cultural sense, from the Guatemalan people that just adopted this shyness that really limits themselves from being public facing people, then you have to really ask yourself, well, do I want things to change? Because I can assure you things can change, or things can be a little different. So the second type of person that I want us to look at is someone that determined to increase his capacity. All right, so we can be the type of people that increase our capacities. All of us have the capacity to increase our capacity. So the person in the Bible, we find their story in Mark chapter 2 verses 1 through 12. And it goes like this. When Jesus returned to Capernaum several days later, the news spread quickly that he was back home. Soon the house where he was staying was so packed with visitors that there was no more room even outside the door. While he was preaching God's word to them, 4 men arrived carrying a paralyzed man on a mat. They couldn't bring him to Jesus because of the crowd, so they dug a hole through the roof above his head. Then they lowered the man on his mat right down in front of Jesus. Seeing their faith, not the faith of the man paralyzed, seeing their faith, Jesus said to the paralyzed man, "My child, your sins are forgiven." All right, so then right there, there's a couple of things that are really fascinating. And we have two different now. The first man we saw, he was the man that was sitting by the pool of Bethesda, and there were other people around him, but he couldn't get himself to the pool, right? Number one. But now this second person that we encounter is paralyzed, and we see that he has 4 friends. And his 4 friends take him to Jesus. So Jesus is not coming to them. They take him to Jesus. And not only do they take them to Jesus, but when they found no way through the front door, they didn't even go through the window. They decided to climb up on top of the house, break the roof, and then lower him and then put him right before Jesus. Now I ask you, what do you think was easier? To take a man to the pool or to climb the man down through the roof? Surely it had to have been easier to see a man laying by a pool and then just maybe walk or move him a couple of steps to get to the pool. That seems easier. But that's not how it happens for him. And so for the second person, that what we see, the way that his capacity was increased, because of 4 different friends. Now, there's a couple of things that I want us to observe here. Now, it doesn't necessarily say whose idea it was. It doesn't say that it was the paralyzed man that initiated the move or requested, like, hey y'all, can y'all take me to Jesus? We don't know that for a fact. And maybe he could have been it, or maybe it could have been his friends. But whoever's idea it was, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it happened. So it doesn't matter whose idea it is. What happens is that it gets done. Number one. Number two is that it doesn't necessarily say that they were his friends. We don't know the quality of friends that they were. We just know that they were committed enough to get this man to Jesus so that he can receive his miracle. So it doesn't matter the type of relationship they have. What really mattered, or what I see, is that what mattered was that their commitment to improving the man's situation. And the third thing that we have to completely acknowledge is that these 4, actually 5, men were like, they were really something, because they interrupted the entire program. I mean, can you imagine interrupting the best preacher in the entire history of the universe? That was Jesus. And so that's exactly what they were doing. Now, the couple of things that I want us to take and apply from this is that there are people who are going to make us uncomfortable, but it will be for our own good. It could not have been comfortable for that man that was laying, for him to be carried. I don't think it was comfortable for him to be necessarily lowered through the roof. It could not have been comfortable for people to have been staring and looking and kind of wondering and talking and saying things about him. It could not have been comfortable. We know that he was paralyzed, but he surely could have had sensations in other parts of his body, and it could not have been comfortable for him to be moved and for, all the different types of positions that had to be manipulated in order for him to get to, or ultimately where he needed to be in order to be positioned for a miracle. So there are people that will make us uncomfortable, but it will be for our own good. Now, the other thing that we have to really apply to ourselves is that we have to be willing to try several times. If the door is closed, we have to find the window. If we cannot go through the window, heck, find the roof. That's exactly literally what this man did. But the whole thing that we have to realize is that we cannot give up. If we are going to increase our capacity to do whatever it is that we need to get done, then surely we have to be able to try several times. If at first you do not succeed, try again. And then lastly is that we have to stop hanging out with people that want to see us disabled. I mean, think about it. You have to be, if we say, if the first thing I took, the first application I said is that we have to be willing to be uncomfortable in order for us to get better, then we have to be willing to be around people that actually want to see us get better. We have to stop hanging out with people that want to see us disabled. And the truth of the matter is that those people exist. There are people that don't want to see you get better than them. They exist. They're real. You might know something. You might know them. And if you're that person, stop being that person. But if we are going to increase our capacity, then we have to actually get around people that want to see us be capable of doing different things. So if we start to wrap this thing up, the conclusion really that what I want you to think about and reflect for yourself is, which of the 2 groups of people do you want to be in? Do you want to be in the group of people that have completely given into an inability or an impairment of doing something of some sort? Or do you want to be within the category of people that are able-bodied, that can move, that can make things happen? Many times we may see students, or we may just see young professionals believe that they're just not good at X, Y, or Z. And the reality, though, is that surely we go to school to learn. We don't go to school because we know everything. So for the typical person that may say, well, I'm not good at math. Well, maybe you're not good at it, but you can learn it. Maybe you're not going to be completely, you're not going to be a genius in calculus or differential equations, but surely you can learn what it is that you need in order for you to move up or to move to another level, right? But unless you've been diagnosed with an actual learning disability, then surely you can learn. And that's the whole point of this, is that all of us have the capacity to increase our capacity. The way we do so may be different for all of us. However, the one sure way that we can increase our capacity is, number one, to want it. The first thing that you have to do is to want it. You know, in the man that was by the pool of Bethesda that Jesus encounters, that's exactly what Jesus asked him. Do you want to get well? Because you never know who you're going to come face to face that has the ability to enable you to do the thing that you want to do. But it all starts with a desire. It all starts with a wish within you. No one can put that in you. You have to want it for yourself. And then the second thing is that you can truly surround yourself with people that can either train you, develop you, and that can enable you to do something. But you have to take the initiative. If the people don't come to you, you have to go out and maybe find your people in order to do that. So what is it essentially that you want to do? What is it that you want to accomplish? You know, what is it that you, where is it that you want to make an impact? And based on that response, then surely you can start to figure out who are the people that will make you uncomfortable, but will want you to accomplish that. So don't do anything that can lead you back into an inability or a disability. Instead, find the people that can move you forward. Find the people that are willing to see you enabled to do the things that you want to do. So then going back to the story of the man that was lowered through the roof, right? Where we left off is when Jesus actually tells him, "My child, your sins are forgiven." But this is how the story ends. From verse 6 on, it says, "But some of the teachers of religious law who were sitting there thought to themselves, 'What is he, Jesus, saying? This is blasphemy. Only God can forgive sins.' Jesus knew immediately what they were thinking, so he asked them, 'Why do you question this in your hearts? Is it easier to say to the paralyzed man, your sins are forgiven? Or stand up, pick up your mat, and walk? So I will prove to you that the Son of Man has the authority on earth to forgive sins.' Then Jesus turned to the paralyzed man and said, 'Stand up, pick up your mat, and go home.' And the man jumped up, grabbed his mat, and walked out through the stunned onlookers. They were all amazed and praised God, exclaiming, 'We've never seen anything like this before.'" So the man that lowered the paralyzed man through the roof, they were committed to his well-being. They were committed to see him becoming an abled man. And so those are the first group of people that you need to encounter and find quickly. And you need the people that know that they know where they can take you in order for you to get the answer. Maybe they don't have it, but they can tell you to the ones that do. And so find those people, number one. Number two, do not be discouraged by the people that question the process or the people that question the end result. You're going to find the criticizers. Yes, there are the people that are going to oppose what it is that you do. We know people are always going to send some sort of hate energy your way, but don't mind them. Be obedient to the one that has the solution for you. Be obedient to the one that really can change your situation, and just be in tune to that person or those people. And then lastly, the amazing thing is whenever you do, and whenever you find yourself on the other side of your situation, or whenever you see yourself exercising the thing for which you had to increase your capacity in order for you to do so, there are going to be the onlookers, and there are going to be the people that are going to be praising the end result. They're going to praise what it is that you accomplish. But my hope is not only would they praise your result, not only would they praise your actions, not only would they praise the people that got you to that point. My hope is that you will find the people that are going to be able to praise the one that caused the miracle, and that is God, the source, the fountain of it all. We need the people that can take us to Jesus if we don't know Jesus. And then once we get there, we need to be obedient to whatever it is that Jesus says. And when we're obedient, we're going to find ourselves in just a completely different situation as a result of being obedient. And when we do, then we need to continue to surround ourselves with the people that are going to continue to praise Him, because at that point, we know that we've unlocked the people that we can really grow in community with. So that is my hope, my prayer for you, that number one, you will want it. Number two, that you will surely find the people that will make you uncomfortable and take you to the one that can change the situation, or whatever it is that you want to, however it is that you want to increase your capacity. So this has been ProFAITHsional Favor, and I pray that you increase your capacity. Until next time, bye-bye.